What's up, everybody? So here we are deep into the NBA offseason. And while most of the major dominoes have already fallen, there are still some odd rumors hanging in the air. Especially if you're a Boston Celtics fan, and man, I gotta tell you, this one is wild. Buckle up because we're talking about a name that honestly I never thought would be in the same sentence as Celtics roster plans ever again. Yep, it's Ben Simmons. You heard that right. Ben Simmons. Now listen before you start yelling at your screen or throwing something across the room. Just breathe. I know it sounds insane. And if your stomach turns just hearing his name, believe me, I get it. I'm with you. The idea of Ben Simmons in a Celtics jersey is like waking up from a championship dream, only to realize your alarm clock is broken and now you're late to your worst nightmare. But look, there are actual reports floating around that Simmons has been on Boston's radar this offseason. It's not just smoke. There's some fire, or at least some smoke from a very confused campfire. According to some pretty legit league sources, Simmons has been discussed not only by Boston but also by teams like New York, Sacramento, and Phoenix, which immediately raises the question, what exactly is Simmons right now? Is he a reclamation project, a locker room risk, a defensive-minded playmaker who just forgot how to be an NBA player? Honestly, all of the above might be true. Now here's the thing, when Simmons came into the league, he was supposed to be that guy. Not just an all-star, but a perennial All-NBA talent. Rookie of the Year, 3-time All-Star, two-time All-Defensive Team member, All-NBA third team, nearly averaged a triple-double in his prime years. On paper back then, he looked like the prototype for a modern big guard. He could guard 1 through 5, push the ball in transition, and had the kind of floor vision that made G-Miz drool. But something just broke along the way, mentally, physically, or both. And now what we have is a shell of that version, and here's where it gets complicated. Because personally I root for comebacks. I think it's genuinely heartbreaking when a player with that level of natural talent just spirals, whether due to injuries or confidence issues, or whatever demons they're fighting. I hope Ben Simmons figures it out. I hope he makes peace with his body, with the media, with the fans, and with himself. I really do. But I just don't think Boston is the place for that story to play out. Not here, not now. Let's be real, this Celtics team is in a fragile spot emotionally and structurally. They just came off a roller coaster season. After winning the championship 2 years ago, the expectations are through the roof. Then Tatum goes down. The team fights through adversity. They're scrapping every game. Vibes matter more than ever right now. The locker room chemistry has to be airtight because when Tatum comes back, this squad needs to be ready to go all in, zero hesitation, just like they did on that title run. Any disruption in energy, any misstep in cohesion, and the whole thing could collapse. And let's not kid ourselves, Ben Simmons at this stage in his career is a walking vibes gamble. It's not just about his skill set anymore. It's about what he brings or doesn't bring to a locker room that needs unity more than ever. Can you imagine Joe Mazzulla trying to work Simmons into the same offensive flow that had guys like Xavier Tillman hoisting threes in the finals? Simmons literally went an entire season without even attempting a three-point shot. Not one. How does that fit with the Celtics spacing heavy perimeter-focused attack? Now sure, if you squint really hard and live in a world of optimism, maybe you can sell yourself on the idea that Simmons brings defense, size, and transition play. Maybe you're telling yourself, hey, if we're paying him the veteran minimum, it's worth the shot. Low risk, high reward, right? I get that logic. I really do. But I think we've seen enough from Simmons over the last 3 seasons to understand that it's not about salary or opportunity anymore. It's about confidence, willingness, and fit. And on all 3 counts, Boston just doesn't feel like the right place. Let's look at what he did recently. Simmons played in 51 games this past season, which was honestly more than I expected. He averaged 5 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists per game. That's not terrible if we're talking about a role player. But it's not exactly inspiring either, especially when you consider that he was once putting up numbers like 16, 8, and 7 across multiple seasons. That's a steep drop. And for someone who doesn't shoot the ball, can't stretch the floor, and has been visibly uncomfortable on the court, it's hard to see the upside. And think about the pressure that comes with wearing that Celtics jersey. This isn't a quiet market. This isn't a team rebuilding quietly in the background. This is Boston. The fans are loud, passionate, and ruthless when things don't go right. If the Celtics stumble out of the gate and Simmons is even slightly to blame, or even perceived as part of the problem, it won't matter if he's on a minimum deal or not. The spotlight will be on him. The headlines will be brutal. The fans will let him hear it. And that kind of environment could unravel whatever progress he might be trying to make. Even if Simmons is physically ready mentally, he has to be tougher than he's ever been. Boston's not going to hold his hand through the process, and frankly, they shouldn't have to. This is a team with championship aspiration, not a development program for reclamation projects. Every piece on this roster needs to be aligned with that mission. And Simmons right now is not a sure bet to help that goal. He might be a distraction. He might be a risk the team simply can't afford. That's why if you're Brad Stevens, you've got to think carefully. Is it really worth it? Do you bring in a guy with a decorated past and a questionable present, hoping he finds himself again, or do you look at other free agents guys like Torrey Craig who might not have Simmons' ceiling but bring effort, consistency, and most importantly, no drama? Sometimes having fewer headlines is a good thing. Sometimes you just want players who do their job, show up every day, and keep the energy light. And yeah, you can hit me with the accolades. Simmons was Rookie of the Year. He's made multiple All-Star games. He was on not that long ago, but all of that happened before 2021. Since then, he hasn't averaged more than 7 points per game. You can't live off past glory forever. Eventually, you have to produce again. And the truth is, Simmons hasn't shown that he can at least not yet. Look, if you told me the Celtics were in a different position, if they were rebuilding, if they had time to be patient, if they were taking chances on upside plays, maybe then I'd feel differently. Maybe then I'd say sure, take a flyer on Simmons. But this team is in winnow mode. The core is built. The system is in place. There's no room for hesitation. Every game matters. Every role player matters. And Simmons isn't just any role player. He comes with a history, a narrative, and a whole lot of baggage. So yeah, while the idea of a redemption arc sounds nice, I just don't think this is the place for it. Boston needs steady hands, positive locker room presence, and players who fit the system. Simmons is too much of a question mark on too many fronts. And frankly, if I'm betting on a comeback, I'd rather see him do it somewhere else. Somewhere with less pressure, fewer expectations, and a little more room to breathe. But hey, that's just where I stand on it. Maybe I'm being too harsh. Maybe Simmons deserves another shot, and maybe Boston is exactly the kind of environment that could push him to rise again. I'm open to being wrong. But from what we've seen so far, this feels like a move that could shake the foundation of everything the Celtics have worked to build over the past few seasons. Now, while the Ben Simmons chatter might be enough chaos for one off season, it doesn't stop there. Because apparently this is the year of nostalgia. We're seeing players trying to turn back time like it's a Cher concert. Damian Lillard went back to Portland. Chris Paul returned to the Clippers. So of course the question floating in the air now is, what about Russell Westbrook? Does he get his own full circle moment? Here's the thing with Russ. The guy is a walking basketball contradiction. He's a former MVP who still has flashes of brilliance, but also someone who can single-handedly swing momentum, and not always in the right direction. He's a hustle machine, no doubt. You will never catch Russ not going full speed. He'll dive for loose ball, sprint in transition, fight for boards against bigger guys. But at the same time, he's also going to make decisions that leave you scratching your head and questioning your life choices. Last season, Westbrook played 75 games. Let me say that again, 75 in this load management era. That alone deserves applause. He put up 13 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists per game, mostly coming off the bench. Not bad for someone who's clearly in the twilight of his career. But he also shot 4% from the field, 32% from 3, and 6% from the line, so it's not exactly efficient basketball. And then you toss in the turnovers, the missed defensive rotations, and the occasional "why did he take that shot" moment, and suddenly you're in for a roller coaster every night. Now, as far as Boston goes, I just don't see it. I really don't. The Celtics are trying to keep the ship steady, and adding Westbrook while entertaining doesn't exactly scream stability. This isn't 2016 Russ. This is the version who needs to be managed, needs to buy into a role, and more importantly, needs to not disrupt the flow of a team already chasing another banner. The energy is unmatched, no doubt. But is that energy directed in the right places anymore? That's the real question. And you know how this media environment works. If things go sideways even for a moment, Russ is going to be the headline. It's never going to be the 13th man or the last guy off the bench. It's going to be Russell Westbrook. If he's not starting, people will ask why. If he is starting, people will question whether he should be. The Celtics don't need that kind of circus, not when the window for another championship is still very much open. And the truth is, even with all these hypothetical names floating around, the focus right now should be on preserving what made this group special to begin with. Talent, yes, but also chemistry, culture, and consistency. That's why in the middle Of all the player talk, one of the most interesting moves the Celtics made this offseason didn't happen on the court, it happened in the front office. Boston brought in Drew Nicholas as the new executive director of player personnel. Now, unless you're deep in the basketball operations scene, that name might not ring a bell right away. But it should. Nicholas has been around the league. He played his college ball at Maryland, where he was a legit scorer, and then went overseas and carved out a really strong career in Europe. Most recently, he was a scout with the Brooklyn Nets, and before that, the director of scouting for the Denver Nuggets. That means he was part of the brain trust that helped build a title-winning roster in Denver. He understands what winning rosters need and, more importantly, how to find and develop overlooked talent. That's a massive win for Boston, especially considering their increased interest in international prospects. Look at the last couple of draft classes. You've got Amari Williams coming out of the UK system, Hugo Gonzalez from Spain, both players with potential who aren't coming from the traditional NCAA pipeline. That's where a guy like Nicholas comes in. He knows the global game. He understands different development systems, different styles, and how to spot players who can transition to the NBA style. That's the kind of edge a franchise needs if they want to sustain long-term success. It's not just about finding stars, it's about building depth, creating competition, and staying ahead of the curve. And honestly, after watching what Toronto did, having their lead decision-maker handle draft night and then firing him immediately after, it's refreshing to see Boston go the other way. They're doubling down on continuity, structure, and process. They're not trying to build the plane while flying it. They're reinforcing the cockpit before the next takeoff. But let's shift gears for a second, because I want to talk about something that's been bouncing around the fanbase all week. And that's the idea of bringing in Domantas Sabonis. Now, on the surface, I get the appeal. Sabonis is a wildly skilled offensive big man. He can pass, he can score from the post, he rebounds like crazy. And he gives your offense a totally different look. He's basically a budget Nikola Jokic, and I don't mean that as an insult. He's a guy who can average something like 16 points, 12 boards, and 6 assists on a good night. But the comparison being thrown around, and this is where I think we have to pump the brakes, is swapping Jaylen Brown for Sabonis. And to me, that's just, no, absolutely not. That's a hard pass. Jaylen Brown is not just some asset you throw into trade machine scenarios. He's a finals MVP candidate. He's a two-way wing who can defend the best scorers in the league and still give you 25 a night. Does he have flaws? Sure. The left-hand jokes will never die, but come on. We're talking about a core piece of a championship team. You don't trade that away for a guy who, let's be honest, hasn't proven much in the postseason. Sabonis is elite at what he does, but he's not a floor-spacing big. He's not a rim protector. He's not someone who changes your defense. And his playoff track record is, well, let's just say it's not inspiring. One good year in Sacramento, a short run with Indiana, and then some underwhelming exits. Meanwhile, Jaylen has been to the mountaintop. He's played in pressure-packed moments. He's taken over playoff games. You can't just toss that aside because someone looks fun in regular season stats. And here's something else to think about. Jaylen Brown making $50 million a year might seem wild, but that's the market now. That's not bad value. That's just where the league is. If you're mad about it, fine. But be mad at the cap structure, not the player. Because guess what? If your team has a guy making that kind of money, it probably means they're worth it. That's not a bad thing. That's a sign of success. So when I see people in the chat suggesting trades like Brown and Simons for Sabonis and DeRozan, I just can't take it seriously. That's not decay. That's not even close to realistic team building. You can't just ignore age, salary structure, playoff value, and fit because the names look good together. That's not how it works. In fact, if you want to talk about offloading contracts or improving balance, then look at the margins, look at the bench, see what players are still on the board that can contribute without disrupting the foundation. Guys like Gary Payton to Delon Wright, Chris Boettcher, even a name like Monty Morris. They're not sexy moves, but they're smart moves. These are players who bring effort, who fill roles, and who don't create unnecessary distractions. You need those guys. Those are the kind of signings that win you playoff series, not the loud, flashy names that eat up the oxygen in the room. And speaking of distractions, let's circle back one more time. Because in a world where people are discussing Ben Simmons, Russell Westbrook, and Domantas Sabonis like they're the missing piece to a title puzzle, maybe the best move Boston can make right now is none at all. Maybe the smart thing is staying the course, letting the roster breathe, keeping the energy right, holding on to the system that brought you a title, that built an identity. and trusting that when Tatum comes back, this team will be ready to rise again. That's the balance you have to strike when you're a contender. Not every season is about making the splashy move. Sometimes it's about resisting the temptation to fix something that isn't broken. Let the new front office staff settle in. Let the young guys grow. Let the veterans take leadership. And most importantly, preserve the culture. Because in this league, talent wins games, but vibes win championships. And right now, the Celtics need to protect their vibes, like they're guarding the Holy Grail. But before we continue, please remember to subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest news about the Boston Celtics. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. The basketball world is buzzing with whispers of a potential blockbuster trade that could shake the NBA landscape. The Boston Celtics reportedly have secured LAURI MARKKANEN in what insiders are calling a shocking exchange. While nothing has been officially confirmed, the rumor mill is running wild and fans from all sides are eager to see how this could reshape the Celtics roster and future. Boston, known for its strategic and often bold moves, seems to be positioning itself for another title run by pursuing MARKKANEN, a versatile forward with a sharp shooting touch and strong presence on both ends of the floor. MARKKANEN's ability to stretch the floor with his three-point shooting and contribute inside would perfectly complement the Celtics' core of stars, potentially adding a new dimension to their offense. The Celtics have been hungry to regain their dominance, and acquiring a player like MARKKANEN could be the spark that reignites their championship aspiration. Sources suggest the deal involves a surprising package from Boston, which has left many analysts and fans stunned. The specifics of the trade remain unclear, but the buzz is that the Celtics were willing to part ways with key assets to land MARKKANEN, signaling their intent to win now rather than build slowly. This kind of aggressive move is classic Boston, calculated risk-taking aimed at immediate impact. The timing of this possible trade is also fueling the excitement, with the NBA season in full swing and playoff positioning becoming increasingly critical. Adding a player of MARKKANEN's caliber could provide the Celtics with the offensive firepower and versatility needed to outmatch their Eastern Conference rivals. Moreover, MARKKANEN's youth and skill set fit well with Boston's long-term plans, suggesting that this acquisition might not just be a once-and fix, but part of a larger strategy. However, as with all rumors, skepticism remains. Celtics fans and basketball observers alike are waiting for official confirmation before fully embracing this potential blockbuster. Trades of this magnitude rarely come without complications, and the final details could still shift. Nonetheless, the possibility of MARKKANEN donning a Celtics jersey has already sparked heated debates across sports media platforms and social networks. If this trade materializes, it could mark a pivotal moment for the Celtics franchise, reigniting hopes of championship glory and signaling that Boston is ready to dominate once again. For now, the basketball world watches and waits, buzzing with anticipation over one of the most thrilling trade rumors this season. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Boston Celtics, please subscribe to our channel and give the video a like. We always appreciate your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.